Disability Dialogue Project presents Connecting to Community Peer Support. This webinar was recorded on Thursday the 19th of June and explores the benefits of peer support and what is needed to create a good peer support program. Hosted by Kath Marnie, this event features guest presenters including Aya Webe, Mandy McCracken, Qiang Fang, and Romeo and Rose-Ann from PPP. This audio presentation of Connecting to Community Peer Support is produced by Vision Australia Radio.
It's really great to be with you. Just to give you a little visual description of myself, I have white skin and I have dark brown, straight, fairly thick, short hair, dark brown with a few greys creeping in. I am wearing an orange jumper with a turtleneck, and I'm wearing some fairly large headphones, apparently similar to gaming style headphones. And in front of me, I'm sitting at my computer, and in front of my computer is a Braille device, which I'm using to just follow our prompts and keep myself on track, hopefully. Just a little bit about me, because it's the first time I've hosted this, so it's really great to be here. But for those of you who I haven't met, which is probably a lot of you, I am in my mid-50s and I'm blind, and I've been hanging out in the disability peer support space for over 10 years. So obviously I'm a fan. I've been really privileged to have a number of roles at an organisation in the Hunter called CEDA, Community Disability Alliance Hunter, which is all about peer support. It's the foundation of what we do there. I love facilitating and training. And I guess my work, if I want to summarize it, comes from my belief that what we have in common far outweighs our differences. So that's probably my, bottom line. So I really like to welcome you to today's open dialogue. Really warm welcome if you're with us for the first time today. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather. I'm on the land of the Awabakal people, and I recognise their continued connection to the land and the waters of this beautiful place, acknowledge that they never ceded sovereignty. And I respect all elders, ancestors, and any First Nations people here today. So for those of us who haven't been to one of these events before, I guess you can think of it like a live show where you control the conversation. It's designed to be inclusive, accessible, collaborative, respectful, and most importantly, fun. So we really encourage you to have your camera on if you're comfortable with that. And so just a quick rundown of how this event will go. We'll start by looking at some of the feedback that we received from you before the event. Then we'll get a presentation from Chen about her experiences researching peer support in the Chinese community, followed by an open discussion with the rest of our panelists. We'll also hear from Mandy McCracken, and we'll hear from two people who are part of a peer support group for parents with intellectual disability. Then we'll have some time for questions and answers at the end from anyone who's participating and would like to do that. So throughout the event, we'll be collecting and paying attention and noting the questions that you may have and the chat questions and comments, and we'll be constantly inviting you to join in that chat as you would like to. So I'm using a screen reader today, so I can't easily read the chat and share your comments and questions. So we have Jess here as our moderator, and Jess is going to share your chats with all of us throughout this event. Jess, you should be on camera now giving us a wave, I believe. And you might also say a quick hello and just give us a visual description of yourself, Jess, so that we know your voice and people will know you on screen as well.
Thanks, Kath. Hi, everyone. I'm Jess. I'm on War in My Country. I am a early middle-aged lady, let's say, with short-cropped brown, very greying hair. And I am here to hopefully make things go smooth. I'm wearing, I don't know, a green army jacket today. Have a good session.
Thanks, Jess. So as I started to say before, if you are also unable to access the chat functions, but you want to contribute at any time today, you can email. The address is info@disabilitydialogue.com.au. Or if you've got an email with a reminder about today's event, you can reply to that email. So that's if you can't access the chat, but you want to make a contribution, and we'll make sure that Jess is aware of those and includes them as well. If you need to, we might have the opportunity for you to come off mute in our Q&A section at the end. And that's particularly for people who might not be able to access the chat or the email. Sorry, I should also like to say a quick welcome, a warm welcome. We have a live captioner, and we have 2 Auslan interpreters. So that's Bernadette, Angela, and Nat. So welcome to you as well. So a little bit of background about the Disability Dialogue. It's a project to promote inclusive, collaborative, disability-led conversations. And we'll just start with a shout out to our partners. So we have Dana, Inclusion Australia, Alliance 20, Melbourne Disability Institute, and so a shout out to those fabulous partners. We're funded through an information linkages and capacity building grant from the Department of Social Services. And we also want to acknowledge the support of the Community Broadcasting Foundation, and also shout out to Coward Community Broadcasting Association of Australia and Vision Australia. So today's discussion is about peer support. It's part of our series of discussions around belonging. Last time we spoke about transport. I guess peer support's something close to my heart. I like to think of it as the I get you factor. And for me, it's about people with the same lived experience coming together and sharing their experiences. It can be social, it can be motivating, it can be encouraging. We can learn new things, and we can make changes in our life through peer support. Sometimes it might be funded through government grants and other sources in order to support workshops and projects and organizations. And sometimes it's super casual, and it might happen when maybe just 2 people meet by chance and get talking about their shared experience. And I'm sure that we'll learn a lot more about what it means today from our panelists and also from your contributions. So let me introduce our wonderful panelists for today's discussion. And I'm going to ask each of the panelists one of the questions from our survey. And we also encourage all of you to give your own answers in the chat if you wish to. So some of you have probably filled out the survey before today. So the question that we're going to start with is, what's one lesson that you've learnt from peer support? And I do encourage people to add their contributions in the Zoom chat. So first up, we're going to hear from Mandy McCracken. After a successful career in publishing and advertising and sales, Mandy McCracken enjoyed time at home, raising her daughters. Since losing her hands and feet to sepsis in 2013, Mandy has worked as a content creator for ABC Radio and online, is a regular face in the Australian media, and a storyteller and public speaker. She's the founder and CEO of Get Started Disability Support Australia, and that supports those who are new to disability. She co-founded the Quad Squad She co-founded the Quad Squad, a multiple limb loss support group, and regularly volunteers with La Trobe University's prosthetic department, helping to educate the next generation of prosthetists. So, Mandy, can you start by giving us a visual description? And you might let us know what's meant as well by the words prosthetics and prosthetist. And then can you share with us a lesson or something memorable you've learnt from a peer?
Hi, Kath. Hi, everyone out there. Mandy McCracken here. Yes, it seems to be we are all the greying hair women today. So I'm here with my curly, what was red hair, which is now going grey. I have glasses and a woolly green scarf because I'm in central Victoria and it's pretty cold down here at the minute. So thanks for having us. One lesson that I learnt about peer support, so when I became disabled at the age of 39, all I wanted to know was that it was going to be okay. That was the key thing. I just wanted to know that my life had not finished, that there was still vibrant life to live out there, and that I could have someone to talk to that, as you said before, the I get it factor is really important. I just wanted someone who understood what I was going through. They'd been through it themselves, and that they were going to tell me that it was all going to be okay. Oh, and sorry, your other question was prosthetics. Yeah, it's a mouthful. Yep. So I use prosthetics because I had my hands and feet amputated, and so my prosthetics are I use robot hands and robot feet, and I also today I'm using a body-powered hook, so that just helps me hold on to things like a pen or a pencil, so that I can write. Today I'm using my hook because it's the easy way that I can access a computer.
Thanks, Mandy. Lots of great stuff there I'm sure we'll come back to. And clearly you're a believer in the lessons that you've learnt and the lessons that that peer support can offer all of us as we go. So thank you for getting us started. Next up, we have Aya Weeby. Aya is a researcher at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, and Aya focuses on disability with a particular interest in the experiences of Australian Muslim women with hearing loss. And she explores that in her PhD and community work. Aya uses her lived experience and community involvement to make research accessible and bridge gaps between different groups. So Aya, welcome. And I'm going to ask you the same question as we've just asked Mandy, and don't forget others might want to put that in the chat. But Aya, the question for you is, what is something memorable you've learnt from peer support?
My name is Aya. A bit of image description of myself. I'm a Muslim woman. I wear the hijab. I'm wearing a very floral, colorful hijab today, and I knit jumper because it's very cold. And I'm joining from the University of New South Wales, Sydney, which is in the Bedigal land, and I also acknowledge the traditional custodian of the land. I'm very happy to be here today and join this conversation about peer support. I did work on a project called peer support, I think about 5 or 6 years ago. It was funded by the NDIA, and I hired our centre, the Social Policy Research Centre, and the Australian New Zealand School of Government to work on our peer support project. And it took about 4 years, and I was part of that project. And I also do a bit of community work with deaf community, Muslim communities, and different disability communities, trying to so I have very different experiences, but I do see value in peer support where people coming together that have similar experiences, no matter what it might be. So one group, you could have maybe a deaf connection or disability connection, and then another group, you could have a cultural or religious or any other. And recently there's been groups now where there's all of those kind of identities could be more, so maybe smaller groups being emerged, and they could be like deaf Muslim groups, for example, or other gender group, like any specific group. And I feel like there is value in that to feel bit more comfortable with people with more similar experiences, especially when you might feel a bit more marginalized or have harder experiences than other people.
Also, Aya, that's really good for us to remember that, sometimes we can be in more than one peer support group, I guess, at the same time. And also, while we're here today to focus specifically on peer support for people with disability, it's great to remember that peer support is found in many, many aspects of life. So thank you. Aya, can I just ask you before we move on, is there a particular lesson, something that you've learnt that stands out to you that you've learnt through peer support?
Yes. So one of the roles I had for the peer support project was we were developing resources. So I was working with organizations developing resources for peer support. So things like accessible format, easy read, videos in sign language, different language translation of glossary terms about peer support. So there are a lot of resources that have been developed by organizations, and our job was to kind of evaluate the resources, the process, and build the capacity. And some of those resources, I can send you the links later on, and you can have access to some of those. So it was pretty much building the capacity of peer support for organizations to have access to them. But we also try to make sure that these resources were accessible in so many different ways and languages and formats. And working with different language groups, so we had Auslan, Sign Language, Glossary, and 6 other cultural languages like Arabic, Vietnamese, Chinese, and I can't remember the other one. And some of them, for example, there was a glossary of terms, but peer support, peer mentor, a few terms, but it was different and challenging to apply in different culture language settings. So some languages don't have a word for peer, for example. They might have friend or something different. So we had to use, or in a way, the people, the organization had to do workshops and discussions about what the word peer means in their language, in their culture, including Auslan for the deaf community. They came up with a sign and said peer. So they had a discussion and what peer means in their understanding and context. So sometimes there could be a word for some of the concepts in the language and culture, sometimes there's not. So they had to kind of have a discussion of what those words mean, if that makes sense. And sometimes they're already doing peer support, but in different ways, if that makes sense.
Awesome. So you learnt a lot about all the kind of the meanings and the, what we might say, the nuances of all of those words. So I'm sure we'll hear more about that as we go. So thank you, Aya. Next up, we're going to hear from Dr Qian Fang. Qian is a lecturer at the University of South Australia, and her experiences is in culturally responsive disability policy and practice for people with disability and their families from diverse backgrounds, particularly focusing on peer support networks run by and for people with disability and their families from diverse backgrounds, and also working with disability organisations who are working with those diverse communities for culturally responsive practice, and research on the international Chinese community. So Qian, welcome. We're going to hear more about all of your research in a little while, but I'll start with the same question. What is a lesson that you've learnt? And you might start with a visual description of yourself as well. And then what's a lesson that you've learnt from peer support?
Thank you, Cass. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all online. I'm joining today's event on the Ghana land. I'm from Chinese background, so the visual description, I have black hair. Today, I'm wearing a blue navy sweater and an orange scarf, and also I'm wearing glasses. So what I have learned, the most important thing from peer support is about human connections. So it means people help each other by sharing their life experiences. So I see in peer support, we see the value in ourselves and also in others. I really like and inspired by this core idea of peer support. So I'm also applying this core idea in my daily life, helping my students, my colleagues, and people I know, because I strongly believe that peer support help us, everyone, grow and do better.
Thank you, Jen. That's great stuff. And again, we'll hear more from you. So we are, as we said, as I said before, we did ask people before today to give us some of their experiences and their thoughts around peer support and what it means, what works, what hasn't worked for people. And we're going to share some of those responses. We do have some slides on the screen. And if you would like a copy of those later, you can have those as part of the follow-up email that you'll get from after today. So the first question, which you answered, those of you who did the feedback, was, have you or your family member or the person you support ever had peer support? And we've got a pie chart, and it shows that 75% of people answered yes, 19% answered no, and 6% were unsure. So probably we can say that it might be a bit of a biased sample of people who've chosen to attend this event and fill out the feedback. But Mandy, does this number surprise you at all from your experience?
Well, yeah, it does actually, because 3/4 of us have had a connection with somebody else who's living with a disability or, has a connection to disability. And then there's 1/4 of us that haven't. So, yeah, that's surprising. It would be really lovely if that whole graph showed that, 100% of people living with disability had a connection to somebody else who's been going through the similar situation. So, yeah, it does surprise me.
Thanks, Mandy. Something we can all keep working on, building those connections. And so we also asked, what did you learn from peer support? And we had some really great responses, and we've just highlighted a couple of those here on the slide. So we learnt, a person said that they learnt that our experiences are not unique, even though we may feel alone and isolated at times. Another response was resilience, confidence building, a sense of connection with others. That's what they learnt through peer support. Another person said there was huge value in hearing other people's experiences and the power of being seen and heard. Another piece of feedback was self-confidence, group norms and topics. That's what they learnt from peer support. And another person said, I can talk with other people. So, Aya or Chen, do any of these ring true to you? Would one of you like to give us a response to those things that people thought they'd learnt from peer support?
Yes, I agree with most of these, and they did come up from the research report that we did about building confidence, finding information. At the time as well, most of the peer support groups were about the NDIS and sharing feedback and advice about trying to access NDIS and what you could get. And I think it's still happening now, but at the time that was kind of taken over a lot of those peer support topics that were being talked about. But I think it had evolved, and now that, I think once you have like a place to meet, that's kind of part of the problem solved, and then you can organize topics and meetings and what have you. But sometimes we also learned that it doesn't need to be a physical meeting. It can also be a network or online or catch up with friends. So the kind of flexibility in organizing the peer support. But I guess the meaning and the value of it is pretty much similar for across a group of people.
I agree with Aya. So these benefits that you've covered, they closely reflect on what we've heard from our research from Australian Chinese people with disability and their families, and also peer members from other cultural backgrounds. So normally they mention that they benefit from peer support in terms of emotional support, whether it is in the short term, as you can see, they can talk to other people, or in the long run help build up their self-confidence and resilience. And they also mentioned that they gain new information and they learn new things from peer support.
Thanks, Jen. So it's really cool. We're all on the same page, which I think is great. So another question that people were asked is, what did you like most about peer support? And the responses that we have here on the slide for what people liked most said, one person said, the ability to connect with others who shared similar experiences, a shortcut to connection, as we didn't need to try and explain our situation. There was a common understanding of language and barriers. They liked that they get it. Other people get them. They liked a sense of connection with someone who has the same lived experience. They liked regular catch-ups and meeting others. Also, trust and genuine mutual support was mentioned as well. So I'll get our panelists to comment in a moment, but we'll just go to the next slide, which another question was asked in the survey. And that question was there anything that you didn't like about peer support? Anything that you didn't like? And some of the comments were, sometimes there are blind spots about how there are many ways to get to the same place. So sometimes blind spots around different ways to get to the same place. Another comment was, sometimes peer support spaces are rife with misinformation, as no one is an expert, and sometimes values are misaligned. Another comment was, some peer support I didn't like was when a person had a bit of an ego and kind of said it would be my way, or was their way, or it was the wrong way. So that was a issue that someone raised. And another person didn't like that there aren't many opportunities for this. There aren't many opportunities for peer support. And another person didn't like that their group was defunded. The funding point is an important one, and we'll hopefully cover it in more detail during the Q&A. So would anyone like to comment? I'll open it up to any of our panelists. Would anyone like to comment on the positives or the negatives that are mentioned in the slide?
I might, if I can, Kathy. It's Mandy here.
Sure, Mandy. Yeah.
I had an interesting experience with my peer support. I've been disabled now for 13 years, and sometimes it takes a while to find the right group or the right connection. Early on, when I was still in hospital, I had a visit from a peer support volunteer, and their frame of mind wasn't really positive, and I actually found it really quite confronting when they came to visit, because I was really looking for that positive, you'll be fine, everything's going to be okay experience, and they arrived with a frame of mind that was more, this is going to be really hard for you. I've been through a really tough situation myself, and I'm going to share with you how tough that was. So sometimes, you do need to trial and error support groups. Maybe you won't have a great connection to start with, but, my experience over time is I eventually found my people, quadruple amputees that are similar mindset to me, and that's where my real connection started up.
Thanks, Mandy. Yeah, really interesting. It doesn't work all the time everywhere, and I guess that's okay and important that we acknowledge. So thank you. Another question that we asked for feedback on was, would you do peer support again in the future? So For this one, we've got a pie chart with 91% answered yes, they would do peer support again, and 9% answered maybe. So for the most part, it seems that people are having a positive experience. So we're going to quickly finish up with one more slide, and that was any kind of final comments that people made in the survey. So it's got a few quotes on the slide, just comments that people made. One person said, "I'm not aware of any peer support programs." Another comment was, "Combining the goals and interests of a person can improve the outcome dramatically." Combining the goals and the interests. Another person made the comment that it was about visibility, self-awareness, and self-acceptance. And sometimes these things need to occur before people actually access peer support. So we have to be ready for it. Another comment, which is a question, was, how do we encourage people to come and keep coming? And another person suggested that the NDIA needs to develop a section on peer support. These are all really great comments, and we appreciate everyone that took the time to fill in the survey before today. So next, there are many different experiences of peer support, and we're going to get Qian now to give us a short presentation about her research, looking at the benefits of peer support in the culturally and linguistically diverse communities. So over to you. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you, Kath. Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm going to share some findings about our research on disability peer support in culturally and linguistically diverse communities. We also call CALD communities. Culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds means that people from different cultural backgrounds, and many of them do not speak English at home. Today, I'm going to mainly talk about three things. One is disability peer support in CALD communities. The second is understanding of good peer support from peer members' perspective. And the third is challenges to effectiveness and sustainability of good peer support. So first, I would like to talk about disability peer support in CALD communities. CALD people with disability and their families face various language and cultural barriers accessing and using disability support in Australia. So when people face difficulties, they usually turn to seek support from their families, friends, and people they trust. So over the time, some of these informal support networks gradually developed into peer support groups. In CALD communities, we see different types of CALD disability support groups. For example, groups run by and for people with disability, or groups that put people with disability and their families together. We also see youth groups and women's groups. So for some groups that are established and run by people with disability and their families, we see those people, they are strongly committed to disability rights and the well-being of their peer members. So the good part of these groups are they would listen to their peer members' support needs, and they are committed to strong support for their peer members. But the disadvantage is many of these independent peer support groups are facing funding issues. So funding shortfalls in many times make these peer support groups to be struggling with being stable and run various activities to meet their peer members' needs. We also see some disability peer support groups are facilitated by disability organizations because these organizations want to better understand the support needs of CALD people. So the good part of these peer support groups is their funding and support resources are more stable. But we also see mixed results from these peer support groups. Some peer support groups, their peer members didn't show strong leadership roles. They just joined the group activities. And we also see because of the high turnover rate of the staff, so they didn't give these groups very strong support until these groups become independent. But we also notice a unique example. One disability organization identified a group facilitator very early on and provide strong capacity building support for the group facilitator. The organization also provide ongoing funding to help the group build up their connections by funding some social events like Young Child or outdoor activities. So when the funding ended, the group can still run its own in the long run under the leadership of that peer facilitator. The second thing I want to talk about is good peer support from peer members' perspective. So when we interviewed peer members from different cultural backgrounds, their expectations about good peer support commonly centered around two things. One is emotional support. So peer members expect to receive emotional support from people who shared similar lived experiences. However, they also mentioned that emotional support is not just some struggles or the emotions. Peer members also said that they expect to have some encouragement and positive emotions from their peer members. And another thing they emphasized is this emotional support gradually happened over time among members. It means that they feel uncomfortable to be pressured to share their life experiences. So it means that bondings, connections happened naturally over the time. The second thing peer members expect to gain from good peer support is learning new things. However, what kind of new things depend on different persons' situations and their support needs. For young people with disability, they expected to build up their ability to meet people at their age and develop a friendship by joining peer support groups. When it comes to family members or middle-aged people with disability, they normally mention that they would like to gain new information from peer support groups to help them better navigate the NDIS. The final thing I would like to talk about are the challenges that CALD disability peer support face at this stage. The first thing is how to critically challenge negative cultural norms. We know that cultural values significantly influence the dynamics of disability peer support groups. Some cultural values are positive, but some cultural values, they negatively affect the rights and well-being of peer members. For example, in our field work, a parent told us that she wanted to explore some government support for her child with disability. However, this support is closely linked with a cultural taboo. So every time she brought up this topic, other peer members stopped her because they didn't want to talk about this topic. So the result is the mother couldn't find useful information and advice from her peer members within that group. So this is a challenge. The second challenge is support for facilitators. We see that most of the support in place currently are around money, help funding guest speakers, or provide simple advice about how to run the groups. These support are helpful, but not enough to support peer facilitators to run the group in the long run, because these support are not providing facilitators with ongoing capacity building skills for the sustainability of these groups. And also, they didn't recognize the time and volunteer work that these facilitators have made for peer support groups. The third big challenge is the funding shortfall since COVID. We've heard many sad stories that because of these fundings ended, many independent peer support groups or small community organizations, they have to pause or even cancel peer support group activities. If you are interested in our research, the first two links refer to the recent two publications. And also, there is a research team in Social Policy Research Center at UNSW. They have done a big research project about good practices in peer support groups in Australia and also internationally. So the third links, through the third link, you can find all the relevant publications and easy read resources developed from that big project. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Great. We're introducing two lovely, wonderful people, Rose-Ann and Romeo. Welcome. They are both involved with Positive Powerful Parenting, or PPP, which is a self-advocacy group run by and for parents with intellectual disability, which helps people to learn their rights and build a sense of community. Kath, you can just stop me when you're ready.
I'm ready.
You're ready. Great.
Yes. Thank you, Jess. So they were both involved in a powerful short film about the experiences of parents with intellectual disability. And we're going to link to that in the chat for those who can access it, but also we'll include it in our follow-up email after this event. So Romeo and Rose-Ann, welcome. And can I ask you to introduce yourselves and the work that you do? And you might each give us a little visual description of yourself. So who would like to start for us?
Hi, my name is Romeo. I am the peer worker for Positive Powerful Parents, PPP for short. I have short grey hair and I'm wearing a black hoodie.
Thanks, Romeo. Great to hear that. And Rose-Ann, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yep. Hello, my name is Rose-Ann. I'm a parent member of PPP. I have brown, blonde, green, pink and blue hair and a black top.
Thank you. It sounds amazing. So would you like to tell us about what PPP, what it does, what the group does?
We are going to do an interview style presentation.
Perfect.
Hi, Romeo.
Hi, Rose-Ann.
We are both involved with Positive Powerful Parents. What does PPP do?
Romeo. Positive Powerful Parents is a self-advocacy group run by and for parents with an intellectual disability. PPP does training for parents about safe story sharing, running a safe group, and how to start your own self-advocacy group. We protect the rights of parents with an intellectual disability. We connect parents with a disability across Australia. We share information and resources with parents. We have done training for child protection on how to support parents with a disability better. We created resources for parents with an intellectual disability. Some of the resources are the short film, like Compare the Parents short film, booklets and cartoons. We run Melbourne and Gippsland Friday friendship groups and a national online group.
Okay, what do you do as a peer worker at PPP?
I answer and respond to emails. I run both Friday friendship groups in Melbourne and Gippsland. I make agendas for the committee meetings, Friday friendship groups and the online national group. I co-run training for parents about how to start a self-advocacy group, how to share their stories safely, and how to run a safe group. I post information on Facebook for parents. I go to meetings with organisations that want to know more about PPP. We have travelled and run training for parents. We support parents to be involved in activities. I support parents to learn about their rights. I support parents to speak up for themselves. Rose-Ann, I have a question for you. What do you get out of peer support at PPP?
Hi, Romeo. The first thing that comes to my mind is friendship and being able to communicate with other parents who may have or have gone through the same situation. Some parents have gone through the same situation as I have, and some parents are still going through the same situation. I found having PPP once a month is beneficial to have a safe place for conversations with people who have or are going through the same situation. If it wasn't for PPP Friday Friendship Group, I wouldn't have known about self-advocacy groups and resources and my rights to be a parent. I have grown to be confident and be able to share my story and my experience of being a mum with an intellectual disability. I have spread my wings to be able to communicate for the rights of all parents around the world and for my children. Romeo, I have a question for you. How do you support at PPP?
The way I do peer support is at our committee meetings and at our Friday friendship groups and on our Facebook pages. When I am chairing a meeting, I go around the room and check to see if everyone is okay or to see how everyone is going. We support each other when hearing hard stories and do a final check out at the end to make sure everyone is feeling okay after the meeting. I check in by phone to see how parents are going. I mentor parents who PPP has helped to start their own self-advocacy group. Rose-Ann, I have a question for you. How do you do peer support at PPP?
If I notice a parent struggling, I go up to them and ask them if they're okay, and if they would like to step out of the room and have a conversation. I ask the parent if they would like me to stay with them and continue to help them to be more comfortable to come back into the room. I also support parents who have different backgrounds and cultures.
Rose-Ann, I have a question for you. Would you recommend people joining a self-advocacy group or a peer support group?
Yes, I would recommend people with a disability joining a self-advocacy group or peer group because you're able to find out about information and resources you may not have been aware of, and it is a safe place to discuss issues, and you can make good connections and friends. Romeo,
Yes,
I have a question for
Rose-Ann?
you. How did you first find out about peer support and PPP, and how can people find out more about it?
I learned about PPP by coming to Reinforce, and that's how I started with PPP. I have been a peer worker for the last 5 years and are learning a lot from my peers. People can find out about PPP on our website, which is www.positivepowerfulparents.com.au, and they can look up our Facebook pages. Or if people want to find a self-advocacy group or peer group, they can go to the Voices Together website, which is www.voicestogether.com.au.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to us today.
Thank you so much, Romeo and Rose-Ann. You guys are doing some really important stuff and really remind us of all the things that peer support can offer us and that we can contribute to it as well. So thank you. We should definitely all check out your short film. And I think that's been in the chat, but also we will make sure that the links to that are in the follow-up email that we'll all get in the next couple of days. So what a lot of fantastic stuff we've been hearing. Lots of food for thought, I'm sure. So let's have a 10-minute break just to give everyone time to take a breath, grab a drink, do whatever you need to do. We do hope that you'll stick around and come back for the rest of the discussion.
We're listening to the Disability Dialogue webinar, Connecting to Community Peer Support. Now we'll hear from David Young. David is a peer facilitator in the Australian Chinese community in Sydney. He established a peer support group run by and for Australian Chinese people with disability and their families in 2018. The group now includes over 70 peer members.
Hello everyone, this is David. Since back to the 2018 or something, that's first for the NDIS rollout for my area. So it's based on New South Wales, Sydney, Hurstville area. So at time, I found, many Chinese background parents. They are struggled to access the information and for the NDIS. So at time I worked for the volunteer at Salvation Army. So I know some organization what to do for the things. The things is for the the parents. They most come from China, and their language barrier and the community access barrier, all the things added up for the parent don't know what to do. And most of my group, the people with disability at time is at young age also, but they suffered for the mental health problem or the autism. So they can't do anything by themselves, and their parents is the lack of all the needed the access. I'm not saying the help. Their help is everywhere, but they don't know where to access this and look for the help. So that's really backlash for the people. So I set up a Chinese disability peer support group, try to help the parents to know more about the local and community information, government and disability the information or something. That's why I start for the group.
Thank you, David. My next question is, could you please share some big moments for your group as a whole or for yourself as a peer facilitator?
Yeah, my group, they start with just a few people, like maybe less than 10 parents. Now I have more than 40 family in my group. And every family, they have at least one child or the young adult children, for the disability, or some family even have two or more than two or something. So that's really for my group, the growth, the things is now at time, when first start with NDS, so let people know the rights and the government policy and another, the organization to where to help us. But later found, they have all the problem for the like the Centerlink and housing, all the things. Most people, if they struggled, and I think a lot of people after the I don't know, another background for the Chinese, the background. Most people, when they have the kids like that, they most become a single mother and look after the child or children. So they have all the problem, not only for the NDS, for the almost everything, and even they got in the, it's really hard to get the NDS, even you got in the funding, all the things, and even afterwards you find the, the treatment and the specialist, they also have the problem. But and another thing is, for the group, at time we have to, parents is okay, we can not need too much money. We just do all the volunteer to let people know. But at time, maybe 7 years pass. The kids all get time become a young adult. They need to get more help or education to assess the workforce or the adult life. So now, if for them, if there's no funding, all the things are really hard and really hard for all the young adult children, all the things. And for the year, I try to find some funding that's I don't understand. So sometimes I know, like I talked before, like our parents don't know how to assess the NDS. Now, for me, the problem is when I'm a disability, mentally disabled person. Okay, so for us, the disability people run the disability organization, the peer support. It's really hard to get the funding. And I see a lot of organizations, they're easy to get. When we apply for that one, you need to find a writer. That's really, I don't know why, maybe the bureaucratic or something, they not know how to help the disability based the organization or even like group. Just like me, I'm truly to say there's money, government, they have so much money to put in all the vulnerable people like disability people, but we not directly get that one. They think that they put all the things to get support the employment. Not if we apply for I don't know why it's so hard for that one, but I have the people, it's so easy to like rob our money to the things. Yeah. There should be some people like government listen to that one, and the people manage the funding, they should directly, in contact with us, not see the I can't afford a writer to help me to write that application. They should be the people. They should come to us to know, what we did and what we do. Yeah.
David and Chant, do you mind if I interrupt? What I'm hearing from you is there's a lot of struggles as someone who helps peer parents and people with disability to try and understand all of the systems and everything that is happening, and your peer support group makes that a little bit easier, but there's still lots of problems.
Yeah, because the language, easy for, the people, I just tell you, even they have the interpreter or something.
Yeah.
They are focused on the disability. If they have a meeting, they book some, they're not professionally, but they don't know this area. A lot of things, they can.
Right.
As you said, Jess, David and Chen, lots of really important issues that you've raised, and I'm sure we'll give you ways to follow up if people want to stay in contact with you. So thank you. But Mandy, we would love to hear again from you. Your story's so interesting. I know you've been contributing to the chat a bit, so I can't access all of it, but I know that your name's popped off. So feel free in this next bit if you've got anything that you want to kind of add from what you've noticed from the chat. But we would just love to hear, I guess, particularly around what do you think peer support looks like for people, I guess, new to disability?
Yeah, so the new to disability is a different space because people go through stages. They need support at the very early stage of their situation, and a lot of them just want to tell what they've just been through. So it's a lot of processing, the experience that they've just had for them, and often just to say it out loud to somebody else who understands is really important. And then the next stage they go through is learning what support is available and starting to reach out and connect to those supports and then understand how the system works, because, of course, the disability sector is a very complex system. And then once they've sort of done that, they start sharing their success stories about, what they've achieved and, how they're moving forward. And there's a real pride in the ability to do that. And then as they sort of work through the stage, I find that they become more independent, and they might even just move away from the peer support group and go along with their lives. Or often those people that are having that success and getting that independence start supporting the next cohort of people that come through. So that's where we as peer support organisations need to grab those people and capture them whilst they're feeling empowered to share their successes with the next cohort of people that come through. So that's what has been my experience. And there's been quite a bit of conversation through the chat about what about regional areas. And the work that I'm doing with Get Started is we're trying to set up peer support groups that are locally based in neighbourhoods. So we're working with councils to actually get that embedded in council areas so that it's very much in your neighbourhood rather than the type of disability that you have.
Fabulous. Really keen to hear from you briefly too about how do you think that your informal peer support helped you to build and I guess to have those perhaps more informal experiences, but then work to develop Get Started, which perhaps offers now more formal structures for people.
My informal peer support really started in a pub. We got a couple of coordinates together and we brought all our families with us, which included little kids and everything. And quite literally we sat around a table that was covered in various body parts of prosthetics that people had pulled off and the joy that we had in just being in a group together and laughing about literally a table full of body parts was great. And so we said to each other, well, we must continue this, and we all knew somebody else that was going through a similar situation. So we started a Facebook page, and that was the Quad Squad. And now we've got 400 quadruple amputees from around the world. So it can be really casual. It can be really sort of organic. It doesn't need to be very structured. But, we as a community, we need to have structured peer support so that we don't have people slipping through that system, and we pick up that 25% of people that haven't had a peer support connection.
Thanks, Mandy. I'm a little bit, not that I want to encourage drinking and inappropriate excessive drinking, but I do like to call it beer support when it happens in pubs. So yep, it's really important that we offer both, isn't it? Maybe the more formal things for people who prefer that, but then you can't get away from the magic of those really informal ways of getting together. So thank you. We would love now to have a bit of a chance to hear about just a few minutes, I guess. Jess, I'm wondering if you would like to maybe summarize the chat, maybe pull out any themes that we might want to quickly ask our panelists to respond to.
Sure, there are actually some really amazing themes coming up, but we thought that what might be useful is if we address one of the questions that have come up a few times. And Tin, I can see that your hand is up, and I know you've been really patient. We literally have 6 minutes to go. So what we've offered is that we'll continue this conversation later and maybe stay on and get people's email addresses so that we can make sure we catch people's thoughts. But the big thing that's been coming up is there's a few people really interested in what people have done around the struggles. So how do they handle things when issues come up, when there's difficulties, difference of opinions, the way, people want to do things is a bit difficult. And Cam was really keen to hear some tips and tricks. So if anyone, Kath, I guess first for you, because you've been doing peer work for a long time, would be handy, and then any of the other panelists.
So tips and tricks around what to do when things get tricky.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, I might start, and then feel free if our other panelists want to join in. And Romeo and Rose-Ann, you might have some tips. I noticed you did some really good things. You mentioned some really good things that you do, like checkouts at the beginning of at the end of your meetings. I think they're really important. You talked about, Rose-Ann, offering people the chance to step outside of the main peer group and have a talk, in another quiet space. They're both really important strategies. I think the other thing, and I think it came up in someone's feedback that from our survey questions, was that one of the other things that's really good to offer is the chance to, it's just completely slipped my mind. I'm so sorry. I'll think about that again and jump back in. It's gone. Happens sometimes. They're some of the ones that I have noticed are really important sort of, it's come back to me. Jess, you'll be pleased to know. It's the group agreement. So whenever a group of us are gathering as peers in a space that we want to be really mutual, there's no kind of bosses and we're all in together. There might be someone sort of facilitating, but what I think is really important is that we have what we call a group agreement. Some might call it housekeeping. Sometimes we like to call it something as simple as how we work together. And then when something's not going well in a meeting, someone might be, acting or being in a way that's not comfortable. You can go back to those group agreements and say, remember we talked about the importance of being respectful, or remember we've talked about the importance of not interrupting. So there's some of the things that I think of when things are going a little bit pear-shaped. Does anyone want to add anything from the panel, or anyone else want to throw something in chat for Jess to feedback?
Yes, so in my community work, my volunteer roles, that I try to kind of organize things for people who are deaf and hard of hearing from different backgrounds, but mostly Muslim backgrounds, because we also feel like there's a gap. And it could be challenging because we do get support from other people and other communities helping us, but it's hard for us to kind of set up our own peer group. We don't have an organization. So sometimes we organize things, everyone come together. It's amazing, but it's not our job or our role. So how do we keep it going, or how do we, get resources and support to keep it sustainable and ongoing to do monthly? Because I think part of it is everyone has different jobs or no time to do this as their job. So I think that's something to think about. I like how we talked about before the structure and informal, organic nature of the group, but something also like having one or two people to being the main job for them to keep it going, if that makes sense. I think that's something that we all can kind of agree on.
That sense of it being someone's actual role, and that's another really way of valuing the importance of peer support. We need a coordinator. I think those of us anyone who's tried to be part of more than one group, or even the first group, it's good if we have some leadership. And I guess peer support is a great space to develop that leadership as well.
So to add to that, there is absolutely some chat about how we develop leaders and what that might look like for our future. So what are the things we can think about in funding people, in training people to make sure we're constantly growing leaders, which, as we all know, is some of our pet favors in the world. I'm also really conscious that, Tin, you've got your hand up and you've been waving around, and it's been really hard. Apologies, because there's a million of us trying to do a million things. This will be our very last question. I'm going to unmute you. Hi, Tin.
I quickly notes with PP we need to think about more inclusive, more independence, and more independence. Some areas we need to have right now in the PPP, in Northern Rivers, in PPP areas as well. Let's be inclusive and importance to that. And I think we need to start talking soon about December month. The 3rd of December, which is going to be International Day, is coming up. So we need to start talking about that. I was waiting for a while to tell you that because it's a very important conversation to think about. And I want everyone to think about anyone on PPP. We need to start a film or conversation in the film to say why is it more important in your community and why is it impact to you, and what your feedback on the film to make into a documentary. What do you think about that?
Kim, there's so much great stuff there. PPP, you are just charging on. Keep up your fabulous work. I love that you mentioned International Day for People with Disability. So as we finish off today, what a great challenge. I think we could, I'd like to back you up, Tim. Why don't we put out a challenge that let's all find ways to highlight the power of peer support in the International Day for People with Disability 2025. We came up with it here at Disability Dialogue. So how cool might that be? Do just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who participated in our discussion today, our panelists in particular, everyone who contributed to chat, all our supporters behind the scenes and on screen. We run these events regularly, and we really want to hear your ideas on topics that you'd like us to talk about in the future. So keep those coming in chats, in email. Can quickly put it in now. And then they're monthly events, so we hope you can join us next month for more debate and discussion. We'll let you know what we're going to do next. And we'll be sending out an email including, you guessed it, a feedback form after the event. Or you can click through now from the form in the chat. Always good to get your feedback straight away, I reckon. So, let us know your experiences. Keep telling us how we can make it more inclusive. And don't forget the email, info@disabilitydialogue.com.au. Thanks all so much for a fabulous event. Look forward to catching you next time. I'm Kath Marnie. Catch you soon.
That was an audio presentation of the Disability Dialogue webinar, Connecting to Community Peer Support. This project is a joint initiative of Dana, Inclusion Australia, Alliance 20 and the Melbourne Disability Institute, and is funded through an Information Linkages and Capacity Building ILC grant from the Department of Social Services DSS, and grant funding from the Community Broadcasting Foundation. For more details on this initiative and upcoming events, visit disabilitydialogue.com.au. This has been an audio presentation produced by Vision Australia Radio.